You ever notice how the quietest moments in a city are sometimes the ones that change everything? It was a little after 9:40 p.m. on a chilly Thursday night in Chicago when Marcus Reed first saw the girl. The street outside the neighborhood grocery store was nearly empty, just a few cars rolling past under the soft glow of yellow streetlights and the distant rumble of the L train echoing through the cold air. Marcus had just finished loading a box of discounted bread into the back of his aging pickup truck, the kind of truck that had more miles than pride left in it, when something small and still near the curb caught his eye. At first he thought it was a forgotten backpack. Then it moved. The figure stepped slightly into the light, and Marcus froze. A little girl stood there alone, maybe 6 years old, wearing a pale blue coat that looked far too expensive for this part of town. One small hand held a worn teddy bear by the arm, and the other rubbed at her eyes like she had been crying for a long time. The wind tugged gently at her hair as she stared down the quiet street, waiting for someone who clearly wasn't there. Marcus glanced around. No parents. No babysitter. No frantic adult searching the sidewalks. Just the hum of traffic 2 blocks away and the steady buzz of the streetlight above them. He walked a little closer, careful, slow, the way a father approaches a nervous child. "Hey there," he said softly, his voice warm but cautious. "You all right, kid?" The girl looked up at him, her wide eyes reflecting the light above them, and for a moment she didn't answer. Marcus noticed the details right away, the polished shoes, the embroidered cuffs on her coat, the kind of clothing you usually saw stepping out of black SUVs in front of luxury hotels downtown. Nothing about her belonged on this quiet corner beside a late-night grocery store. "Are you lost?" Marcus asked gently. The girl hesitated, hugging the teddy bear against her chest. Then she gave a small nod. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. He had seen a lot of things raising his 8-year-old son alone. Late bills, long shifts, nights where sleep came only after the worry finally gave up. But a child alone in the cold was something different. That wasn't something you walked past. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she whispered, barely louder than the wind. Marcus crouched down so he was eye level with her. "All right, Lily," he said calmly, like he had said 1,000 bedtime reassurances before. "Let's figure this out together." She studied his face carefully, the way children do when they're deciding whether the world is safe again. Then, slowly, she stepped closer. Her small fingers gripped the sleeve of his work jacket like she had known him longer than 30 seconds. Marcus looked down at that tiny hand holding on, and something about the moment felt bigger than the empty street around them. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed and faded. The city kept moving like nothing had happened. But Marcus Reed had just found a lost little girl. And before the night was over, he would learn that Lily wasn't just any child wandering the streets of Chicago. Marcus Reed did not rush the moment. Children could sense hurry the same way they sensed fear, and Lily was already holding his jacket sleeve like the night might swallow her if she let go. He stood slowly, careful not to break that fragile trust forming in the quiet space between them. The wind drifted down the block again, colder now, carrying the faint smell of roasted coffee from the corner cafe that stayed open late for delivery drivers and night shift nurses. Marcus looked up and down the street one more time. Still no one searching. Still no worried parent calling a name. Just empty sidewalks and distant headlights sliding past like silent ghosts. "All right," Marcus said gently, keeping his voice calm the way he did when his son Ethan woke from a bad dream. "First thing we do is warm up." Lily nodded slightly, but did not release his sleeve. Marcus walked her across the street toward the small diner beside the grocery store, a narrow place with red vinyl booths and a neon sign that buzzed softly in the window. Inside, the air was warm and smelled like grilled cheese and fresh coffee. The woman behind the counter looked up when the door chimed. She had seen Marcus before, a regular who sometimes grabbed a cup of black coffee after his evening shift. Tonight she noticed the little girl beside him immediately. Marcus gave a small, reassuring smile. "Can we get 2 hot chocolates?" he asked. Lily slid quietly into the booth across from him, still clutching the teddy bear. The bear's fur was slightly worn, the kind of wear that came from years of bedtime hugs. Marcus leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. "Okay, Lily," he said softly. "Do you remember where you were before you came here?" The girl shook her head slowly. Her voice was small when she spoke. "I walked." Marcus studied her face. She was clean, well-dressed, and calm in a way that did not match a child wandering city streets alone. Something about the situation did not line up. The waitress placed 2 steaming mugs of hot chocolate on the table and slid a small plate of cookies between them without asking. Lily wrapped both hands around the warm cup and stared at the rising steam as if it were the safest thing she had seen all night. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He dialed the local non-emergency police number and quietly explained that he had found a young girl who appeared lost. The dispatcher promised to check recent reports and asked him to stay where he was. Marcus thanked her and ended the call. When he looked back up, Lily was watching him carefully again. "Are you going to leave?" she asked. Marcus blinked at the question. "No," he said gently. "Not tonight." Lily seemed to breathe easier after that. She took a small sip of hot chocolate and looked down at the teddy bear resting beside her cup. Outside the diner window, the streetlight flickered once before glowing steady again. Marcus glanced at the clock above the counter. It was already past 10 o'clock. In the back seat of his truck, his son Ethan was probably still asleep beneath the old blue blanket he kept for long evenings when Marcus worked late. Life had taught Marcus Reed many things about responsibility, but one lesson always came first. If a child was alone in the cold, you stayed until they were safe. What Marcus did not know yet was that the quiet girl across from him had come from a world so different from his that the distance between them measured far more than city blocks. And before morning came, that distance would bring someone powerful looking for her. Marcus. Reed finished his coffee slowly, watching the clock above the counter inch toward 10:30. The diner had grown quieter now, the late-night rush fading into the calm rhythm of dishes clinking behind the counter and the low hum of a refrigerator near the kitchen door. Lily sat across from him with both hands still wrapped around her mug of hot chocolate, the warmth turning her cheeks pink. The teddy bear rested beside her elbow like a small silent guardian. Every now and then she glanced toward the window, as if expecting someone to appear in the reflection of the glass. Marcus followed her gaze once or twice, but the street outside remained mostly empty. A delivery van rolled past. A pair of college students hurried along the sidewalk with their coats pulled tight against the cold. No one stopped. No one searched. Marcus leaned back slightly in the booth and studied the girl again. Something about her presence carried a quiet contradiction. Children who wandered the city alone at night were usually frightened, restless, sometimes loud. Lily was none of those things. She was calm, observant, and strangely patient, like someone used to waiting. "Do you remember your house?" Marcus asked gently. Lily looked down at the table for a moment before answering. "It is big," she said softly. Marcus smiled a little. "Big like a house with 2 floors?" Lily shook her head slowly. "Bigger." Marcus did not press further. Sometimes children explained things in pieces, the way puzzle pieces appeared slowly until the picture made sense. The waitress passed by and refilled Marcus's coffee cup without asking. She glanced at Lily and gave a warm smile before returning to the counter. The kindness of small places like this always reminded Marcus of something important. In neighborhoods where people did not have much money, they often shared something more valuable. They shared attention. Marcus looked at his phone again. No return call yet from the police dispatcher. That was unusual, but not impossible on a busy night in a city the size of Chicago. He checked the time once more, and then looked toward the parking lot outside. His old pickup truck sat under a streetlight, the faded blue paint reflecting the glow. In the back seat, beneath a thick blanket, his son Ethan was probably still sleeping peacefully after a long day of school and homework. Marcus thought about him for a moment. Being a single father meant every decision carried extra weight. Every late shift, every dollar saved, every quiet promise made in the dark after a child had fallen asleep. He returned his attention to Lily. She had finished the cookies and was carefully brushing crumbs from the table with the side of her hand. The small action made Marcus smile because it was exactly the kind of thing Ethan did after finishing snacks at home. "You have good manners," Marcus said kindly. Lily looked up at him with a small, serious expression. "My mother says people should be kind to places that take care of them." Marcus nodded slowly. That sentence lingered in his mind longer than expected. It sounded practiced, like something a child had heard many times in a house where lessons were carefully taught. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the diner door slightly. Marcus stood and walked toward the window, glancing up and down the street one more time. Still nothing unusual. Still no worried parent rushing through the night. When he turned back, Lily was watching him again with the same careful eyes. "Are you a dad?" she asked quietly. Marcus paused for a moment before answering. "Yes," he said with a soft smile. "I have a son. He is 8 years old." Lily's eyes brightened slightly. "Is he nice?" Marcus chuckled under his breath. "Most of the time." Lily hugged her teddy bear closer. "I think he would like you," she said. Marcus had no idea how close to the truth that simple statement was about to become. Marcus Reed looked at Lily for a moment after she said that, the quiet certainty in her voice hanging in the warm air of the diner. Children sometimes said things that sounded simple, but carried more meaning than adults realized. He returned to his seat and checked the time again. It was nearly 11 o'clock now. The city outside had grown calmer, the traffic thinner, the sidewalks quieter. The waitress wiped down the far counter while a late-night radio station hummed softly from a speaker above the kitchen door. Marcus picked up his phone and stepped a few feet away from the booth to call the dispatcher again. The same calm voice answered. Marcus explained that he was still with the girl and that no one had come looking for her yet. The dispatcher paused while checking the system. Then she told him something that made Marcus frown slightly. There were still no reports of a missing child matching Lily's description. Not from this neighborhood. Not from anywhere nearby. Marcus thanked her and ended the call slowly. When he returned to the booth, Lily was tracing a small circle on the table with her fingertip while her teddy bear rested in her lap. She looked up when he sat down again. "Did they find my house?" she asked. Marcus gave a small shake of his head. "Not yet," he said gently. Lily did not seem surprised by the answer. Instead, she nodded once and took another small sip of her hot chocolate, which had cooled enough to drink comfortably. Marcus leaned back in the booth and looked toward the window again. The night outside had that quiet stillness that only big cities sometimes reach after the rush fades away. The streetlight cast long shadows across the parking lot where his truck waited. In the back seat, Ethan was probably still asleep beneath the thick blanket Marcus kept there for nights exactly like this. Long nights. Unexpected nights. Being a father meant learning how to adapt when plans changed without warning. Marcus looked back at Lily and made a quiet decision. "Tell you what," he said calmly. "My son is sleeping in the truck outside. I have been working late tonight, and he came along because his babysitter had to cancel." Lily listened carefully. Marcus continued in the same steady tone. "Until we figure out where your family is, you should not be alone. So we are going to make sure you stay somewhere warm and safe." Lily looked down at the teddy bear in her lap, then back up at Marcus. "With you?" she asked softly. Marcus nodded once. "Just for tonight," he said. "Tomorrow morning, we will find your mother and father." Lily seemed to think about that for a moment. Then she gave a small nod and slid out of the booth. Marcus placed some cash on the table for the waitress and thanked her on the way out. The night air felt colder when they stepped outside, the wind moving down the block with a quiet whistle between the buildings. Lily stayed close beside him as they crossed the small parking lot toward the truck. Marcus opened the back door carefully. Inside, Ethan slept peacefully with his cheek pressed against the blanket and one arm wrapped around a small toy rocket he carried almost everywhere. Lily watched him with curiosity and a quiet smile. "He looks nice," she whispered. Marcus closed the door gently so the boy would not wake. Then he opened the passenger side for Lily. The girl climbed in slowly, holding the teddy bear against her chest as she looked around the truck's worn interior with wide eyes. Marcus started the engine and let the heater warm the cab. He glanced once more down the quiet street before pulling away from the diner. What Marcus Reed did not realize yet was that somewhere across the city, inside a house far larger than Lily had described, lights were turning on one by one as people began searching for the missing girl. Marcus Reed drove slowly through the quiet streets, the truck heater humming as warm air filled the cab. Lily sat in the passenger seat with her feet barely reaching the edge of the seat cushion, her small hands resting around the teddy bear in her lap. The city lights moved across the windshield as they passed intersections and long rows of sleeping storefronts. In the back seat, Ethan stirred slightly beneath the blanket but did not wake. Marcus glanced at the rearview mirror for a moment, checking on his son the way fathers do even when everything seems calm. Then he looked back at the road. Lily watched the passing buildings with wide, curious eyes. Every tall building, every glowing office tower seemed to catch her attention. After a moment, she spoke quietly. "Do you live far from here?" Marcus shook his head slightly. "About 15 minutes, he answered. "Small apartment building near the train line." Lily nodded as if she understood exactly what that meant. They drove another block in silence before she asked another question. Is your son nice to people? Marcus smiled faintly. Most days he is. He tries his best. Lily looked down at the teddy bear and brushed its ear gently. My mother says people should try their best every day, she said softly. Marcus glanced toward her briefly. The sentence sounded familiar again, the kind of line adults repeated often in homes where discipline and expectations lived side by side. Your mother sounds like a thoughtful person, Marcus said. Lily did not answer immediately. Instead, she watched a tall building pass outside the window, its top floors glowing with late-night office lights. She is very busy, Lily said after a moment. Marcus did not press further. Some children talked freely about their families. Others spoke in pieces that came slowly with trust. The truck turned onto a quieter residential street where the buildings were older and the streetlights spaced farther apart. Marcus parked in front of a modest brick apartment building with a narrow stairway leading up to the second floor. The place was simple but clean, the kind of building where people nodded to each other in the hallway and borrowed sugar when they ran out. Marcus turned off the engine and stepped out into the cold night air. Lily climbed down carefully from the passenger seat, while Marcus quietly opened the back door to check on Ethan. The boy shifted slightly, but continued sleeping peacefully. Marcus lifted him gently, the blanket still wrapped around his shoulders. Years of practice made the motion easy and careful. Ethan's head rested against Marcus's shoulder as if the boy had done it 1,000 times before. Lily watched with quiet interest. He sleeps a lot, she whispered. Marcus chuckled softly. Kids his age usually do when the day has been long. They climbed the narrow stairs together, and Marcus unlocked the apartment door. Inside, the small living room glowed with the soft yellow light of a lamp near the couch. The room was simple but warm, with a small bookshelf, a worn coffee table, and a refrigerator covered with Ethan's school drawings. Lily stepped inside slowly, looking around with quiet curiosity. Marcus carried Ethan to the bedroom and laid him carefully on the bed before returning to the living room. Lily was standing near the refrigerator, studying a crayon drawing of a rocket ship taped beside a calendar filled with school reminders. Your son made that? She asked. Marcus nodded. He wants to be an astronaut. Lily smiled faintly at the picture before turning back toward Marcus. For a moment the room was peaceful, the kind of quiet that made a small apartment feel safe. But far across the city, in a house much larger than Lily had described, a woman stood in a wide glass office staring at a security screen that showed an empty bedroom where a little girl was supposed to be sleeping. The small apartment settled into a gentle quiet after the door closed behind them. Marcus Reed moved through the room with the steady rhythm of someone used to late nights and careful routines. He walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of warm milk, setting it on the small table beside a plate of crackers. Lily sat on the edge of the couch with her teddy bear resting in her lap, her eyes moving slowly around the room as if she were studying a place very different from the world she came from. The refrigerator hummed softly while the clock above the sink ticked toward midnight. Marcus placed the glass on the coffee table and gave her a small nod. You should have a little something before sleep, he said gently. Lily slid off the couch and stepped closer, taking the glass with both hands. She drank slowly while looking again at the drawings covering the refrigerator door. Rockets, planets, and bright crayon stars filled the small gallery of Ethan's imagination. Lily pointed toward one of them. That one looks like it is flying very fast, she said. Marcus smiled quietly. Ethan says rockets move about 17,000 miles per hour when they leave Earth. Lily blinked in surprise. That is very fast. Marcus nodded. He reads about space every night. Lily finished the milk and placed the empty glass back on the table with careful manners. The small act reminded Marcus again that she had been raised in a place where politeness was expected. You can sleep in Ethan's room tonight, Marcus said. He will not mind sharing the space. Lily nodded and followed him down the short hallway. The bedroom was simple, with a twin bed against the wall and a small desk covered with science books. Marcus pulled a spare blanket from the closet and spread it across the lower half of the bed, where Ethan still slept peacefully. Lily climbed carefully onto the other side, placing her teddy bear beside the pillow before pulling the blanket up to her shoulders. The lamp cast a soft circle of light across the room. Marcus stood near the doorway for a moment, making sure everything felt calm and safe before switching the lamp off. The hallway light remained on, leaving a faint glow in the bedroom. "Good night, Lily," Marcus said quietly. "We will figure things out in the morning." Lily looked at him from beneath the blanket and gave a small nod. Within minutes, her breathing slowed into the steady rhythm of sleep. Marcus returned to the living room and sat in the chair near the window. Outside, the wind moved softly between the buildings while a distant train passed along the elevated track. The city never truly slept, but it did grow quieter at this hour. Marcus rubbed his hands together slowly, thinking about the strange turn the night had taken. A lost child. No missing report. A girl who spoke about a house bigger than anything near this neighborhood. Something about the situation felt unfinished, like a story waiting for its missing page. Across the city, that missing page was already turning. In a towering glass office overlooking the Chicago skyline, Charlotte Whitmore stood beside a long conference table surrounded by security monitors. Her tailored coat hung neatly across the back of a chair, but she had not noticed it for several minutes. Her attention remained fixed on the screen showing the empty hallway outside Lily's bedroom. The security chief spoke carefully from across the room. "We have checked the property grounds twice, ma'am. The gates show no vehicle entry or exit." Charlotte Whitmore did not look away from the screen. Her voice remained calm, but the room felt the weight behind it. "Then widen the search," she said quietly. "My daughter did not disappear into the night." Outside the window, the lights of Chicago stretched for miles. Somewhere among them, a small apartment held the answer she was looking for. The city outside Marcus Reed's apartment moved through the quiet hours before dawn with the slow rhythm of distant traffic and the occasional whisper of wind between buildings. Inside, the small living room lamp remained on, casting a soft circle of light across the worn coffee table where Marcus sat with his elbows resting on his knees. He had not planned to stay awake this long, but something about the night refused to settle in his mind. Every now and then he glanced down the hallway toward the bedroom where Ethan and Lily were sleeping. The door remained slightly open, just enough for him to hear the steady breathing of two children who had found rest without asking many questions. Marcus leaned back in the chair and looked toward the window. From the second floor, he could see the quiet street below, the parked cars lined along the curb, and the pale glow of the streetlight outside the building entrance. It was the kind of peaceful moment that fathers sometimes treasured, the rare hour when nothing demanded attention except the quiet responsibility of watching over the people who depended on you. But across the city, the night had taken on a very different energy. In the upper floors of Whitmore Tower, lights still burned bright behind tall glass walls that overlooked the sleeping skyline of Chicago. Charlotte Whitmore stood beside a large digital map displayed across one of the security monitors. The map showed the city grid in glowing lines while small markers blinked along major intersections. A security specialist spoke quietly beside her while adjusting the display. "We have reviewed the surveillance footage from the property again," he explained carefully. At 9:21, the back garden camera captured Lily leaving through the south gate. The gate was not forced. It appears she knew the access code. Charlotte Whitmore did not react immediately. Her gaze remained steady on the map. The calm expression on her face carried the kind of control that people in powerful positions often learned over many years. But the room felt the weight of the silence before she finally spoke. "Which direction did she walk?" The security specialist tapped several keys, and a line appeared on the screen tracing a possible route through the surrounding neighborhood streets. "The nearest traffic camera shows a small figure heading north along Sheridan Avenue about 12 minutes later," he said. "After that, the trail becomes less certain." Charlotte studied the glowing route for several seconds. The path stretched across neighborhoods that grew gradually less polished the farther north it moved. Expensive homes gave way to older apartment buildings, small diners, and quiet side streets where security cameras were less common. She folded her arms slowly as she considered the map. "Children rarely travel without a reason," she said at last. The security team remained silent, waiting for her next instruction. Charlotte's voice remained calm, but carried a quiet authority that left little room for doubt. "Send vehicles to every diner, grocery store, and gas station along that route," she said. "If my daughter stopped anywhere tonight, someone will remember seeing her." Several members of the team began typing immediately, dispatching instructions across multiple communication lines. Charlotte stepped closer to the window overlooking the dark city below. Thousands of lights stretched across the skyline like distant stars, each one marking a home, an office, or a quiet place where people slept without realizing how fragile the night could become. Somewhere within that endless grid of streets, her daughter had found someone who had opened a door instead of turning away. Charlotte Whitmore did not know his name yet. She did not know his story. But before morning arrived, the distance between their two worlds was already beginning to close. Morning arrived slowly over the city, the pale blue light of early dawn stretching across rooftops and quiet streets. Inside Marcus Reed's apartment, the soft glow from the kitchen window began to replace the warm yellow lamp that had stayed on through the night. Marcus had dozed for a short while in the chair near the window, but years of raising a child alone had trained him to wake easily. The faint sound of movement down the hallway reached his ears first. Small footsteps. Careful ones. Marcus opened his eyes and sat up just as Lily appeared at the edge of the living room. Her hair was slightly messy from sleep, and she carried the teddy bear tucked under one arm. She looked around the room with the quiet curiosity of a child waking in a place that still felt new. Marcus gave her a gentle smile. "Good morning," he said softly. Lily returned the smile with a small nod. The apartment was still peaceful, the only sound coming from the refrigerator humming quietly in the kitchen. Marcus stood and walked to the stove, setting a pan on the burner with the comfortable familiarity of someone who had made the same breakfast routine many times before. Within minutes, the smell of warm pancakes began to fill the small apartment. Lily watched from the kitchen table as Marcus poured batter into the pan and flipped each pancake with careful timing. She rested her chin in her hands as if studying the process closely. "My mother does not cook," she said after a moment. Marcus glanced at her with a mild smile. "Some parents are very busy," he said kindly. Lily nodded slowly but did not say anything more. A few minutes later, Ethan's bedroom door creaked open, and the boy walked into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He paused when he saw Lily sitting at the table and blinked in surprise. Marcus placed a plate of pancakes in front of both children before explaining calmly. "Ethan, this is Lily. She needed a safe place to stay last night." Ethan studied the girl for a moment before giving a friendly wave. "Hi," he said simply. Lily waved back with a small smile. Within minutes, the two children were quietly eating breakfast together while talking about simple things like school and favorite cartoons. Marcus watched them from the kitchen counter with a quiet sense of relief. Children had a way of understanding each other faster than adults ever could. Outside the apartment window, the neighborhood was beginning to wake. A bus passed at the end of the street while a few early commuters walked toward the train station carrying coffee cups. Marcus poured himself a mug of black coffee and glanced at the clock on the wall. It was just after 7 o'clock. He was about to reach for his phone to check again for any updates when a distant sound rolled down the street below. Engines. Not just one vehicle, but several moving slowly along the block. Marcus stepped toward the window and looked down. A line of dark SUVs had turned onto the street and were now approaching the apartment building one by one. The vehicles moved with quiet precision before stopping along the curb beneath the streetlight outside his building. Lily had heard the engines too. She walked over beside Marcus and looked through the window. The moment she saw the first SUV door open, her expression changed. The quiet calm in her face shifted into something brighter, something familiar. Marcus noticed it immediately. Lily held the teddy bear tighter and spoke softly, almost like she had been waiting all night for this moment. "My mother is here." Marcus Reed stood quietly by the window for a moment, watching the line of black SUVs parked along the curb outside his building. The engines idled softly in the cold morning air while several men in dark suits stepped out and looked up toward the second-floor windows. Their movements were calm but purposeful, the kind of quiet efficiency that usually surrounded people with money and influence. Marcus had seen enough of the world to recognize it immediately. Behind him, Lily was already moving toward the door with quick small steps, the teddy bear still tucked under her arm. Ethan followed curiously a few steps behind, still holding the last piece of pancake from breakfast. Marcus walked to the door and opened it before Lily could reach the handle. The narrow hallway outside was quiet except for the faint echo of footsteps climbing the stairs below. A moment later, the front entrance of the building opened and a woman stepped into view at the bottom of the staircase. Charlotte Whitmore moved upward with calm determination, her presence filling the stairwell before she even reached the top step. She wore a tailored dark coat, and her posture carried the natural confidence of someone accustomed to being listened to. When she reached the hallway outside Marcus's apartment, she stopped. For the first time since the long night began, her expression changed. Lily had already stepped forward, her face bright with recognition. "Mom," she said softly. Charlotte Whitmore crossed the short distance in 2 quick steps and knelt down, wrapping her arms around her daughter with a quiet relief that needed no explanation. For a moment the hallway was completely still. The powerful woman who commanded boardrooms and security teams held her child the same way any mother would after a long night of fear. Lily hugged her back with equal certainty, the teddy bear squeezed between them. After a few seconds, Charlotte stood again, her hand resting gently on Lily's shoulder while she turned her attention toward Marcus. Her eyes studied him carefully, taking in the worn jacket, the modest apartment behind him, and the quiet calm in his expression. Marcus gave a respectful nod, but said nothing. Charlotte spoke first. "You are the one who found her," she said. It was not really a question. Marcus answered simply. "She was standing alone near a diner last night." Charlotte listened without interrupting. For a brief moment the two adults stood there representing very different worlds separated by more than money or status. Finally Charlotte looked down at Lily again. "Why did you leave the house?" she asked gently. Lily hesitated before answering. "I wanted to see if people outside our gate were kind." Charlotte absorbed the answer slowly before glancing back at Marcus. The quiet truth in the hallway was obvious now. Lily had not been lost for long because someone had chosen to help instead of walking past. Charlotte's voice softened slightly when she spoke again. "Mr. Reed, is it?" Marcus nodded once. Charlotte held his gaze for a moment longer before giving a small but sincere acknowledgement. "Thank you for giving my daughter a safe place when she needed it." Marcus shrugged lightly, the response simple and honest. Any parent would have done the same. Charlotte looked down the hallway toward the stairwell where her security team waited before returning her attention to Marcus. Something thoughtful crossed her expression. "Not everyone would," she said quietly. Lily squeezed her mother's hand while glancing back toward the apartment where Ethan still stood near the kitchen doorway, watching everything unfold. The morning sunlight had begun to fill the hallway now, bright and steady. Two families from very different worlds stood facing each other in that quiet space, and none of them realized yet how much that single night was about to change both of their lives.